Good afternoon. Thanks for joining this afternoon. We've got a lot of content today as this is a pretty big subject. So we're only going to wait maybe another half a minute for some of those I see still in the lobby, and I'm sure people will filter in thereafter, but we're going to get started here pretty quickly. So I'll be back in just a little bit here and we'll get things started. All right, why don't we go ahead and kick things off? If somebody from my team that's attending could chat me through Teams or just in the chat window put that you can hear my audio, that would be great. Occasionally, there's always a chance of audio problems. Sounds like my audio is good, so we'll proceed. Great, I'm going to share my screen and we'll jump right into it. So the session today is on Dynamics 365 project operations. There's a lot of confusion in the market, I find, around project management tools in the Microsoft stack. I think that's compounded because they rename products about every 6 weeks, it seems, and then products are constantly evolving and changing. So, we thought we'd hold this session as we're getting a lot of interest and inquiries around the project operations application. So we'll get you through a nice demo today, and you'll see an end-to-end process all the way from sales, all the way through project delivery and closeout. All right. So first, a couple housekeeping notes. This webinar is powered by Microsoft Teams. Everybody's in mute mode to minimize background noise. All attendee cameras are disabled, so you don't have to worry, we won't see you. And please use the Q&A area inside of the Teams interface. It's up on the top, a little bit towards the left, that you can ask questions, interact, and we encourage you to do that, right? It's a big topic. We probably won't have a lot of time for a lot of questions. However, we encourage you to interact, ask questions, give us feedback, et cetera. If we don't get to your question during the session, I can guarantee you that we will get back to you after the session with an answer. All right. So just a little bit about myself. I'm your presenter, obviously, today. I'm Dave Buggy. I'm the founder and president here at Strava Technology Group. Focus mainly on operations, sales, marketing, product, et cetera. I have about 25 years of experience owning Microsoft partner businesses as an entrepreneur and business owner. And I've been really focused on customer relationship management for over 20 years. Of course, that's Microsoft CRM, which got renamed to Dynamics 365. Of course, then I designed and had built the Power CRM product, which is like a lighter version of Dynamics 365, which is very popular. So if you have interest in that, you can just go to power-crm.net, or of course, contact us and we'll get you info. And I'm also personally Microsoft Dynamics 365 certified. I get involved in projects, I do training, et cetera. So I'm really close with product. That's really probably my biggest passion is product. Okay. What we do as an organization is we help companies or organizations achieve success with the Microsoft Cloud Platform, with a very heavy emphasis and focus around Dynamics 365 and Power CRM. But of course, the other components of the Microsoft Cloud Platform all interact tightly with either Dynamics or Power CRM, right? Office 365. Power Automate, Power BI, et cetera. So, we really focus on the Microsoft Cloud Platform in the context of, Dynamics 365 and Power CRM. We, at this point, offer services and our expert level resources for all of the modules in the Dynamics 365 stack, except for the ERP modules, which would be Business Central and what's now called Operations. And we do have partner that we work with that is excellent in those areas of the product. We stay very focused in the CRM areas, the marketing, sales, customer service, the call center application, field service. I even have to look at the diagram to remind myself all the modules now, the project operations, and again, the kind of CRM modules of the product. But we have an awesome partner that we bring in for the ERP and accounting side, and they work under us. So you still have one company that you're dealing with and single kind of project management, et cetera. All right, so I'm not going to go to, as I said, we've got a lot to cover, so I'm not really going to go into a lot that we don't have to. Here's a little bit about our firm. I'm going to go ahead and swoop past that. We're, probably the biggest thing to say about us is that, we have nothing but expert level resources on our team, and that we're very focused on outcomes and solutions. Of course, some complex projects have to be done on a time and materials basis, of course. But we do everything we can up front to make sure that, the estimating that we do around these projects comes in, accurately. Okay, so have this in the recording if you'd like to refer back to it. So what is project operations? Again, there's been some confusion out in the market about what Microsoft offers by way of project management applications. So project operations is a Dynamics 365 application. So it sits alongside sales, customer service, the ERP and accounting, and integrates, with all those applications. It's another Dynamics 365 app, right? So it's using the same underlying database as the other applications in the platform. And what it does is provide what I'd like to say is project-based sales management, and of course, advanced project management. So it's Microsoft's flagship product for end-to-end project-based businesses for sales through project delivery and closeout. Okay, that's kind of the most formal way to put it, which you'll see here in a little bit. There are two other light versions, and the difference between project operations and the two other project management apps are night and day. It's a huge gap. It's going from what would be very, very basic Microsoft Project for the web, which is a component of project operations, but comparing them, Project for the web and then project operations, they're night and day. So we've found that in almost every case that we've talked to a prospect or a customer about project management applications, we've always ended up at the project operations app. The lighter ones just don't seem to do it for most organizations today. Right? This application, Project Operations, again, Microsoft loves to rename things, was formerly known as Project Service Automation. We actually used that product. We use Project Operations today in our business, but we used Project Service Automation as well. So we go way back, right, to the what's called PSA is the short acronym for it. But we used and heavily customized the PSA module that became Project Operations. So just for context. Also, there are three different deployment types for the Project Operations app, and this is really important. The first one is the light deployment, which I'd say is 80% of our customers are using the light deployment, which is what they call deal to pro forma invoicing. And I won't go over every one of these bullet points, but basically, it's all these sales-based tools for project-based organizations, a full sales process, right, that takes you through selling services, all the way down through project management, of course, time tracking, basic expense, material usage, et cetera. It also offers subcontracting. The pro forma invoicing, just so everybody understands what Microsoft means by that. A pro forma invoice is basically a staged invoice, right? It's not an invoice that you send off to your customer. It's usually used for internal purposes, that when a project has things that are ready to invoice in this deployment mode, then a pro forma invoice is generated. The project manager typically reviews it, and then it gets sent to, let's say, accounting, right? You can obviously do lots with some customization, right? Even Power Automate, that we can go all the way to generating actual invoices from those pro forma invoices and creating those in, Business Central or the operations accounting and ERP app, or any other accounting and ERP app that, is able to be integrated with. Okay. So these aren't hard and fast rules, but some of these are. So if you go with the light deployment, you don't get some of the other capabilities, like the next option here is project operations for resource and non-stocked scenarios. And in that deployment, you get everything in the light plus full expense with receipt OCR. So your resources can just scan their receipts as they're out on the road, right? Doing service work. They can just scan their receipts with any device that has a camera and create the expense items from that. It has pro forma and customer facing invoicing built right in. Okay. And the assumption there is that you would be using the operations module or application for your ERP and accounting. However, again, if you're not, it's fine, right? We can use Power Automate to push invoices into Business Central, QuickBooks, or any other ERP or accounting product that is able to be integrated with, right? And Power Automate can connect to just about everything today. I think there's over 1,000 connectors now in Power Automate. So don't take those as hard and fast rules. Probably another bigger difference is actual tools for revenue recognition on projects. We actually have a couple of projects in motion right now where that is the probably one of the top goals for those customers is revenue recognition, right? Recognizing revenue at the right time in a project. And I'll try not go into some of these rabbit holes that I would typically jump down heartily here, so we get through all of our content. The third and most advanced deployment model of project operations is for resource, and that should say stocked scenarios. Sorry, that's a typo. But that's everything in the light, everything in the non-stocked. And in addition, then you get full invoicing, you get production orders, you get stocked materials, which is, items that you keep in inventory. So if you're a roofing company, you probably keep tar and roofing shingles and, other things like that in stock. So that's what stocked materials are comparatively to the non-stocked in the first two scenarios. Right? I know it's a lot. So we have a questionnaire that you can run through that will give you the answer to what is the best deployment model for your organization. And you want to think longer term, right? If you're going through this, which, you just contact us and we'll take you through this questionnaire. But you want to think longer term, right? So just because you don't need, let's say, customer facing invoicing today doesn't mean that you should just, roll out one deployment model that doesn't have that, right? So you want to kind of think ahead, right? And some of those aren't hard rules because, again, we have clients that are using the light deployment that, are actually issuing invoices all the way into their ERP system right through the light deployment model. So it takes a conversation, I think, is what it boils down to. So give us a call. We'd be happy to walk you through our questionnaire here and comes out and tells you what the recommended deployment model is. All right, so we're going to jump right into the demo. I'm sure everybody loves that. You've been had enough PowerPoint in your life. So I'm going to go over here, get my system open, get my notes open so I keep myself on track here, and we'll jump right in then. Okay, so I have a quote that I've already put together here because there's a lot of moving parts to the project operations module and the flow that we're going to go through. So the interest of time, I've put together these records that I already have. You wouldn't want to watch me kind of difficulty typing and talking and getting all this put together. So we already have these records created, and we'll just go through them here. So the first place I want to look here is, and this is the sales app for project operations. Okay, so when you implement project operations, you get a new sales app, which you can either add the project operations components to your Sales Hub app if you like, or you can, start using this app and add anything that's, maybe that you've configured in the Sales Hub to here. It's just another app, right? But this is the sales app. And then down here, you can switch between sales, project management, resources. I have obviously access to all those areas, but a lot of your users wouldn't, right? So salespeople would stay in the sales app. They wouldn't necessarily be able to go into manage resources, for example, right? That's all just security role level stuff. So in the sales app here, I have a quote, and this is where it can start at opportunity, but typically you go from opportunity to quote, right? So I'm going to start right at quote. If you started with an opportunity, then the line items, your quote lines would pull in from the opportunity if you were adding them to your opportunity. That's really the only, thing you're missing seeing here is, an opportunity, right? So we're going to start at quote, and notice that there's a special form that is displaying here for a project-based quote. Very important that you don't use the regular project or quote form in this case, right? It doesn't have the project operations component, so it would not be able to flow all the way through to an order and then a project. So it's important. we're not in training mode here, so won't focus on that too much. But you get new forms that are very project based, even in the sales area. Okay, so I've got my quote. And on the quote lines, there are two different types of quote lines. We'll start on the bottom here. These are your product lines. And your product lines basically are the products that you have in your product database that you sell. Okay. Your top portion here, where they call them project-based lines, are your labor. Okay. And that's really important distinction that we're gonna go through here. So I want to go back to our PowerPoint. I lied. I'm going to get back to PowerPoint just for a minute here, so you have some context. So our fictitious company is going to be Contoso, and what Contoso does is we sell and install production line monitoring equipment for manufacturers. Basically, it's cameras and computer equipment and software that monitor the quality of products that are coming down the line, and flag products with defects, right? By the cameras looking at the product and, some software and some AI, it can, flag products that have, defects or blemishes. That's our fictitious company, okay? We first kind of have to, before we talk about the quote itself, we have to talk about underlying components that are price lists. So in Dynamics, you can have one price list, or you can have many price lists for lots of different reasons. You might have price lists that are specific to a customer, right? So let's say you take your standard price list that has your standard pricing, and you want to kind of apply or assign that to a customer and give them X% discount on every item, or certain products you're going to change the price for that particular client. So that's one use of a price list. Okay, you can make it account based. You can have a price list for different markets, right? So US market, Canada market. You can have a price list for different target customer bases, like manufacturing price list, OEM price list. Okay, so there's lots of ways that you use these. In the project app, price lists essentially define a couple of really key things. The first thing that they define is the role prices, which are very important. The roles are the roles your resources fulfill on a project. So a role is a project manager. In this case, consulting lead, field service lead. It could be an accountant, could be a trainer. It's whatever functional roles that you use in your delivery of services. Could be an installer, right? A technician, et cetera. It covers really all industries that do service work, including HVAC, home-based service companies, et cetera. So you can see here that we have a number of different roles, and over here are the role prices. That's what the price is going to be when we quote labor for these roles. Okay. Now there's multiple of the same name here, because notice that we have multiple resourcing units, right? So you could have one resourcing unit, or you could have many. And many would be for different business units, right? You might want your consulting lead, your price around that labor to be different in business unit 1 versus business unit 2. Maybe your cost is different, right? So that's a reason for business units or different geographical locations. Suffice to say that you can have multiple price lists, multiple resourcing units. Okay. So that defines our pricing. Notice that it's by the hour is the unit. Okay. Then it also has category prices, which are mainly in project operations used for expenses, right? Like airfare, car rental, mileage, et cetera. And you define your pricing in here. This one is at transaction cost. So basically what happens is when somebody creates an expense and they enter airfare, it's going to make the cost equal to whatever the expense was incurred. So $600 is what we paid for it. You're going to pass that right along to the customer. And that's what that at transaction cost does. All right. So next on a price list then is all your materials. Okay. And these can be different. Prices can be different by price list. Okay. Like we talked about a minute ago, but these are all your materials that you have or products that you have on this particular price list. Okay. Next is the cost-based price list. The cost-based price list defines your costs. So we'll go through this pretty quickly. Now we're at the cost level, right? So for our consulting lead for the US, our cost is $338 per hour. I don't know. That is a bit high. I think I'd go out of business very quickly if my cost for a resource was $338 an hour. Bless your attorneys, I guess. However, that's your cost basis, right? So every hour that anybody that performs a role of consulting lead in the U.S. business unit performs, we're calculating the cost as $338. Okay. All right. So then you have your category prices. Same thing we talked about before for cost, right? And this, looks like we're kind of setting the cost here of the each of these categories. So if it's airfare, we're going to charge $600. That doesn't make sense, right? Airfare varies widely in pricing. So you would probably have this at transaction cost like the other price list. And then if you want to mark it up, you have a column here. You can set a markup value. Okay. And then you have your cost on your products. This is what you buy and pay for these products. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about really quickly is there are two main project management methodologies or flows that you can go through with project operations. The first is what's called bottom up, and it's the most complete, comprehensive, and I'd almost say complex if it's the first time you're seeing it. It's really not. Once you go through it a few times, it really makes total sense. It flows really well, but it might seem like a lot because there's a lot of components to it. But bottom up is basically where you're creating a project in the quote phase, and you're having your delivery or service team create the quote by building out the project task list. Okay, that then gets inherited back into the quote. So they're actually going in and building the tasks they have to perform with the hours that they expect they'll take. And then that gets pulled back into the quote. And that then becomes the labor side of the quote, right? So it's a really nice way of getting accurate quoting in the sales cycle for services. Right? Services also, by the way, can be fixed price or time and material based. So for every quote that you have, you can set it to fixed price or time and material. The other methodology is a lot simpler, I think you would probably say if you saw it, but that's just simply you create the quote. However you were going to get the labor pricing, you're going to do it without a project. So maybe you have a quick call with your delivery lead, you talk through it, you put a price on it. It's just not going through a whole project cycle, right, to build out your labor quote. It's just you're creating the quote. Your quote will include labor and products. And then from there, you send the quote. And if it gets won, that's when the project contract and project get created. Okay. We're going to use the top one there. We're going to use the bottom up method because it shows the product in its most complete state. Here is the flow that we're going to walk through. Don't get too scared. Again, I think this, I remember when I was first learning this application, it really was difficult to get my mind around this whole process until I actually went through it a few times and light bulbs just went on. And from there on, it is a very simple process. So I think you would largely find the same. So we're going to go through quote. We're going to create have a project that was created for the estimating where you add roles to the project team. You build out the task list or work breakdown structure that is becomes the estimate of labor. That gets pulled back into the quote gets sent. And then if the quote is won, then what happens there is an order gets created, also known as a project contract. They're the same record, but in the project side, it's called a project contract. You set an invoice schedule if you're going to invoice off of the project, and you make any revisions that are necessary, timelines and any product that might have changed, et cetera. You make those changes on the order, and then you activate the order. And then it's project management is taking it from there, right? The team is performing the tasks that are on the project, and they're entering their time and expenses. And then, we get to project closeout. Okay, so that's kind of the full process. Again, I know it looks like it's a lot. It really is pretty straightforward when you get to it. So let's jump back over now and pick up where we left off. Sorry, I want to make sure I gave all the right context here. So the first thing that we had here was our line items, right? Was the product-based lines, which are our products that we're going to sell and install. And then this labor line, when it was first created, was 0. There was nothing there, because what happens then is that I'm going to jump over to the project. Somebody on our service delivery team actually came in and built out the work breakdown structure, the task list. So work breakdown structure is commonly what we call a task list here. It's your project plan, also known as project tasks or you'll see it as WBS for short, work breakdown structure. It's the task area of the project, basically. So that's how the quote got set to these dollars over here of 18,680. The way that got set was that we created this project-based line that typically would have some workflow notification to your delivery team to say, hey, we need, there's a quote that needs to be done, right? So they would go into this project that was created, right? And they would go build out the work breakdown structure as the estimate for the project, okay? When you first do that, you first create a team in the system, and the team gets assigned to generic resources, except for the project manager most often, because you probably might know who that is, but that could be a generic resource as well. So you're really only adding the roles. So if I go over here and I click new, oh, I believe I can't because, nope, there we go. I thought maybe I had a close the project, but we didn't. So you just give it a position name. So I could call it accounting, like an accountant maybe. And then the bookable resource is going to be the generic resource, because we have no idea who the resources are that we're going to put on this project, right? It's not even a project yet, it's a quote, right? So use generic resources. The reason for that is that you're remember the price and cost list, right? You'll see that in a second here, that the labor cost and the quoted labor comes from those price lists that are attached to the project. So a project only has one, typically a price list attached, right? Then you go in and you pick your role. These are what we saw in the price list, right? These were all the roles that were defined along with the labor rate, and on the cost list, it was these roles with their cost rate, okay? So that's all you would essentially do to start this project. In the sales cycle is to build out a project team based on the roles that you know that you need for this particular project. Then, as you build out your work breakdown structure, again, usually somebody in service delivery is doing this, or service delivery and sales are kind of huddling up to go through this, but this gets built out. Notice that some of these are already assigned. Again, I pre-did some of this to save some time, but you can see here are generic resources, right? So we have no idea at this point who's going to be our field service lead or robotics tech, et cetera. Okay. But you do see that we have, effort over here is probably the biggest thing, because we also have no idea really when this project is going to actually take place. So, we kind of put maybe arbitrary dates based on the date the customer is telling sales they would like the project started and finished. Right. And then those will change likely, before it gets actually into delivery mode. Okay. But you do put in the effort in terms of hours. And that's important, right? Because that's what's going to pull in pricing for labor and the cost. Okay. So I did that, built this all out. We're going to come back to this. So we'll spend some time here, but I'm going to go back to the quote. When I went in here into the quote line, I simply imported the work breakdown structure from the project. And there's a button that you just click to do that, right? So when service delivery says, hey, got your work breakdown structure built for that a datum project, then you can just go in to this line item and pull in the details here. And that you do that just by clicking on this import from project estimation. And that brought in every task, right? Every role that it's assigned to. And that then defined the cost and the sale price, okay? So if I go back to my quote now, I get out of that detail line, go back to my quote, it also calculates your cost and your pricing automatically. So if I go over to the quote analysis, I can see gross margin, things like that, but it's doing that automatically, right? And the pricing is a combination of products, quantities, the price, and our labor hours, quantity, and price, okay? So that's how you use it in a bottom-up method, right? A lot of people won't do that. They'll simply just send a quote, right? And they'll do something to estimate the services, right? But it might not require this rigorous kind of process where you go through an actual project record and you have somebody build out the work breakdown structure. There's a very simple path to that that's called the top-down method, right? Where you just have a quote. If it gets one, that's when you create the project itself. Okay, so you really don't go away from quote. That's important when we get to licensing, and I'll touch on that when we get to licensing and cost of this product at the end. Okay, let me see where I'm at here. So I talked a bit about the resources and building your project team. I just want to jump over to resources for a second and go through a couple things there. So this is our resources area. This is typically the resource manager that is working in this area of the application. And here's our resource records. Our resources are the people that we can have perform our service work. Okay. Notice that they can be a contact. That's the case where you're using subcontract resources. It fully supports the subcontract-based resourcing. Each of those contract resources have their own rates that are established, of course, and those are carried through into the costing and pricing of the project if you're going to use a contract-based resource. Okay, we're going to focus on our user-based resources, so I'm just going to filter that down by only user-based resources, and that's our employees that are in our service team. Okay, let me pull up Naloy. And there's a couple of real key things here when we're setting up resources in project operations. One is the skill sets that that person has. Skill sets are a great way of managing the capabilities of your team, or if you have certifications, awesome way to do that, right? That they can, when they earn a certification, it gets put on their record as a skill, right? I don't know what skills we have. Let's see what we got here. Just as, okay, so these are largely tied to the actual products that we sell. So for example, this skill would be able to diagnose our assembly products, right? So you get the idea. In our world, it might be, is one of our people really proficient in, let's say, the Power Automate application, right? That would be a skill set. You can also have levels of skills, which is your rating value from 1 to 10, 1 to whatever you want, kind of your own rating system. And this is used when you go to schedule the resources. So the requirement will have the skill set that's needed, right? And then when you are shown your resources in your scheduling, it takes those skills into account when it's showing you what resources are available. That really super nice area of the system, not hard to use at all, really pretty simple. You also have your roles, right? So remember we saw those on the project and then on the quote, right? These are the roles that this particular person is capable of performing. And they are then tied to the role costing and pricing on our price list, right? Everything ties together here. Your utilization is important as well, right? So general professional services business typically wants their people 80% utilized on customer-based work, okay? And 20% then is internal overhead work, et cetera. That's typically what you see. Contractors, more like 90, 95%. Because you're not carrying the burden of, them and their overhead work. So usually 90, 95 for a contract-based worker, okay? The other important components in here are over on the scheduling tab is where do they start from in the morning? That's really important if you want to use the schedule board and take into account how far a resource is from the customer site, okay? Really nice functionality there that you just put in where they normally start from, like their home address. And you can use that then in mapping right in the schedule board. You have a map and show your resources. You can say, give me the one closest to this particular address, the customer address. Okay. And then finally, the work hours. So this is these are templates. And it allows you to define templates for different work hours. So excuse me, we have a company that we acquired in India, and we do a lot of product development over there, or custom development. They work different hours, right? So we have a template for work hours that's different for our India-based resources than our US-based resources. Okay, you can have part-time calendars. You can, input your holidays in here, things like that. Okay. All right, let's go back to the project. Back here. And I just want to take a look at the summary tab of the project. So this information here, of course, the customer came from the quote, right? The project manager got assigned, et cetera. But this in here gets backfilled from the work breakdown structure. Okay. So based on your tasking here, your start dates, your finish dates, your hours, et cetera, that's what feeds this area automatically. So we have a total of 93 hours of effort on this project. Our cost, labor cost, is 14,135. And we don't have any variation of that, right? So as you go through a project, it might require more effort. Therefore, your internal cost for resources go up. So it does track that as well. And then over here are your actuals once you start the project and people are actually working on these tasks. Okay. All right. So across the tabs here on the project, we have the summary, we have our task tab that we've already looked at, we have our team that we've already looked at, we have our resource assignments, which we only have, I think, one resource actually assigned on this project at this point, which I think is me. And then we have the other ones that still need assigned that we'll get to here in a little bit. And again, let's say now that we're going to be still in the sales process here. So we're not yet in project management, right? So I'm going to save some of this for when we're in the project management mode. We're still kind of in the sales mode. So next steps would really be that you would send out that quote, right? And hopefully that quote gets won. They accept the quote. And at that point, you would set the quote to 1, which I've already done here. So you can see up here, it's set to 1. That then automatically creates your project contract record, which is a sales order. It's the same exact record, just a different name. So let me go over to my order tab here. And this is now the order that got generated from that quote. And it is a special type of order for project operations. You can see that the form up here is project based. Okay. So on the order, we have the account manager. Again, that was pulled in from the quote. We have who the customer is. We have a link right to the quote, so we can get back to the quote really quickly, right? If we want to go on and look up the actual quote. We've got our price lists that are set here. We're using the US bill rates price list in this scenario. We have any requested dates that the customer requested. So the customer requested that this be delivered by 12/31. So that helps in monitoring the project, right, to see if we're on track or not. And a few other things here that were inherited then from the quote, including a not to exceed, right? So if the customer told the salesperson that their budget is $150,000, then we have to be really careful not to exceed that, certainly without getting written sign off by the customer for additional things that maybe are out of scope. Okay. You have your contract lines, which are, again, same as from the quote. You have your products that you're selling and probably in this case installing. And then up here, you have your labor that we've already went through. So down here, we have 4 products. It's a controller, a base unit, a servo motor, and a camera array. Okay, that's the 4 products that we're installing. And that, is what was sold essentially on the quote. Okay. Probably the biggest area of the order record is where you define your invoice schedule. So if you're going to do that invoicing, either pro forma or actual customer invoicing, then you can go into the line item here and go to the invoice schedule and define your frequency. You can set up whatever frequencies you want. There's no hard rules there. Every 2 weeks, every month, every day, every hour, whatever you'd like. And then you give it a billing start date, because now we're actually starting the project, right? We've won that quote. So we're ready now, nail down dates and things. And then the billing start date would, of course, be used then for the invoice runs. And the system then generates the invoice schedule, and that's used then to generate the actual invoices, right, as we work through the project. Okay? And that gets a little bit more complicated, too much for us to go into today. I want to make sure, again, that we get to everything that we need to. So we're going to skip the depth of some of these things. So let's now talk about project management. So the order gets confirmed, right? And the project manager or whomever is, reaching out and, probably talking about dates with the customer. So let's go back to the project and let's go back to our tasks tab. So one of the biggest things that we have to do here, and actually, let me take it in this order. Probably the first thing that we have to do here is start aligning resources to these tasks in the project. Okay. Really slick way that the product does that. So this one's already taken care of, but basically you can either generate resource requirements. So I can highlight on my team tab, I can go here and say, okay, I'm ready to staff my robotics technician with a real resource. And I just highlight that line and I can click on generate requirement. And what that does is it reads some information from the task and so forth, like the skill set, the role, the hours, the beginning date, ending date. So you'd want to nail those down typically, right, before you go in and resource the project, obviously. So, this is after we've already talked to the customer, that we've, pretty much confirmed most of these dates, at least preliminarily. And now we're going to go and we're going to add, actually schedule resources for this particular project. So as I said, you can go over and actually choose a resource, generate your requirement, or you can just go right from here to book the resource. Again, it depends on your own process. If maybe you don't have a scheduling person, right? The project manager is going to take care of scheduling, and they're just going to use the schedule board to see who's available that meets the requirements for this particular role in the project, and they're going to assign them. If you have a resource manager, then you're typically going to generate the requirement, right? And then the scheduling person is the one that monitors new requirements and picks them up and schedules them. Okay, so this is what a requirement looks like. So I can see that David, the project manager on the Datum project, generated a requirement here for a resource from 11/6 to 11/18. That's the duration, but we only need them for a 2-day work period. And this would typically be 16 hours if it's 2 days. Again, this is demo data. Over here, it tells me, what role in that I need to fulfill, right? I don't have any skills. If I did, that would tell me the skills I need. And I don't really need to worry about that, because from here, I can either go to book and it's going to pull up our resource calendar. And it's kind of a light version just for booking this one requirement. And right now I've got 3 resources that are available based on all the parameters, the dates, the hours, the skill set, and the role. Okay, so I could pick any one of these and I could book, and they would get an email, and even can have a Power Automate that creates an Outlook calendar item whenever there's a booking, and it changes it if it gets changed, and if it gets canceled, it deletes it. So they work, they can still work off an Outlook calendar, which people really like. Take that away from them, they get a little grumpy, right? So that's one way to do it. Real quick, easy way, right? If you're a PM, right, you're just going right from the project to book, which is what we just looked at. Or if you're a resource manager, you can go right from the resource requirement to the book function, or you can go to the schedule board. Schedule board's an awesome tool that they've now unified across both project service and field service. So it's the same tool. And this is, again, the central kind of booking or scheduling tool that somebody would use. Down here are all the open requirements that I have to fulfill. And it's broken out by then projects versus field service work orders. Okay. And then when you pick one, can say find availability, right here, and it will go look for the resources that are available. Again, demo data, but I've got the same 3 resources available there. I would pick one and book them, or I could just drag the resource requirement up to one of these resources and it would schedule it. Really simple. I got to tell you, it's very, very powerful. But it's really simple if it's set up properly, and that's key, right? In these systems is having it properly set up. All right, let's go back to the project, and let's say we've staffed our project, right? So I want to go through some items here on the project itself, and actually I'm on the quote, so I want to go to the project, and I want to start on the task tab. This is actually Microsoft Project for the Web that's being used as a component inside of project operations. So I can actually just go open this project in Microsoft Project Web. Of course, I lose all the dynamics, specific things and functions, right? But I have a basic breakdown of my project here, which is all you get with Project for the Web is kind of you don't really have resource scheduling. I mean, you kind of can. But a lot of the, things that we're looking at, you don't have in just Project for the Web. But, it's a simple interface. Suffice to say, if you want a little bit bigger view of the work breakdown structure, that's a nice way to do it. Okay. So the tasks in here, they can be either parent level tasks, which can be milestones, phases, right? Or sub level tasks, right? And you can have there is a functional limit. I think it's 500 levels deep that you can go. So I don't know anybody that would go that deep. I believe that's the limit. I might be mistaken there, but you can go many levels deep, right? Parent, child, right? If you want to get a really nice work breakdown structure that makes sense for, the way that you deliver services. You can also, let me make sure I'm covering my notes here. Okay. So on task, then you see who it's assigned to, or it might be assigned to a role, meaning it's not yet assigned to an actual resource. And that might be true for, tasks on the timeline here that might be too far out to schedule, right? So you could have workflows or reports that let you know when something needs to be scheduled, like 30 days out from the start of something. Maybe then you want to be notified, and then you would go schedule it. You can do that a lot of different ways. But you have who it's assigned to. You also have the start date, the finish date, right? That becomes the duration, and then the effort is different than the duration, right? So just because it's a day doesn't mean it's 8 hours. That can be different. This is just the time you need it started, the time you need it to be completed by, and then over here is the actual effort in hours that'll get booked to the resources calendar. Right? This little quick look item here tells you that there's additional information that you have to open the task to see. So in this case, I'm going to go and I'm going to open the details, and there's a note here. Okay, so it just tells me, hey, when scheduling the kickoff meeting, use our Dynamics 365 email template that gets sent out for that, right? Because it includes a lot of important information. Also, in the details of a project task, you can also have things like sprints. A project task can be part of a sprint. You also can have checklists, which are really super powerful, right? So in performing, let's say, a site survey, maybe you want certain things to make sure that they get done. That would be great use of a checklist. You can also connect to goals. You can set goals for delivery of services too, like on time, on budget, things like that. It's a little bit too much to go into today, so I'm just going to close that out. You can also just drag and drop tasks around. So if I want to, drag this one above the previous one, I can do that. It now drags it above. I can drag it back down. Really nice current, user interface. They've done some really nice work here in the interface of Dynamics kind of across the board. Okay. You can also have dependencies, right? So for me, whoever is going to be the robotics engineer, for me to start that, install the base unit, I got to make sure that the controller is installed. So you can see that there is a dependency here that the install controller task is complete before I can start the install the base unit. Okay. Also down here, you have some automatic color conditioning, and you can set up some of your own. But by default, it shows anything that's overdue in red, which I love. Okay, and I just put a sample overdue task there so you could see that. This is a really awesome tool because it gives you 3 different ways and views to manage a project, and it's very personal preference based. This is the grid view, right, of your project work breakdown structure, your task list, your project plan. I also have a Kanban board view as well. So if you're, project manager, you have project managers that prefer Kanban to manage their projects, no problem. They've got that built right in, and it just gives you buckets, right? And you can drag things around into the different buckets. So buckets might not be just the milestone. It might be not yet scheduled, scheduled, in progress, complete, right? Things like that you could drag your tasks around to reflect what status they're in. You also have a timeline, otherwise known as a Gantt chart. It's probably the number one thing I hear that people want in a project management tool is a Gantt chart view, which you have here as a full Gantt chart view as well. Okay. You've also got some built-in charts that I find pretty handy. So it's telling me here that we have 14 tasks left. Excuse me, and 13 of them have not yet been started. We have 1 late that we saw. Over here, it breaks them down by the bucket that we looked at on the Kanban board. And then down here, it shows you effort by person. So the only person we have actually scheduled is myself, and I have 7 hours. And then we have 85 hours that are not yet aligned to an actual resource. Okay. And then you can also look at just your project team and the summary of what all they're assigned by task and by hours. And you also have a people-based view that I like as well that gives you a little bit different kind of view of the resources on your project as well as the task, incomplete, late, etc. Really nice views. Moving quick here because we're starting to run out of time. It's a big topic, so I apologize. Of course, you can call us up and we'll be happy to do a demo for you, specifically around kind of how you would use this. So let's now look at, sorry, let me get down here to the next area of my notes. Let's talk about the resources use of this, your actual team of resources, okay? So they typically have their own app that they use, and it's called the team member app, right? We'll get to that when we get to licensing, because that's an important part of licensing here. This kind of is their slimmed down interface. I mean, they would probably have their projects here that they could access and look at. They will certainly have their tasks added here. Right now, all we have is the time entries. The way time entry works, it's so simple. Nobody can complain that this product is difficult to enter time or it takes time to do it. It does not. It's super simple, easiest timesheet product I've probably ever seen. All you have to do, and you can do this from a mobile app. They actually have a mobile app that you can download to let you do this as well. So for those that are out in the field, you just go to time entries. The first thing that you can do is you can import them from your Outlook calendar, right? So it pulls in all of your Outlook appointments for whatever period you have set, and then you submit the ones that were actually for, let's say, project-based work, right? You time to the project and submit them. So it allows you, if you're managing things, in your Outlook calendar, right, then you can suck those in, if you will, by pulling them through Outlook or Exchange, and then tie them to the project and project task and then submit them. Okay, but to do a manual time entry, I could do it in seconds, right? I hit new, I come over here, I choose the date, how long I worked. You also have work classifications, work, absence, PTO. You can absolutely manage PTO requests or time off or vacation requests in here. This is how you would do that, et cetera, right? Travel time, et cetera. What project you worked on. So let's see if I go back to project we've been looking at. I'm going to pick a project task. I'm going to say lead the kickoff meeting, and that's an hour. Let's actually make it something substantial here, like maybe 8 hours. You can also have alerting in here, right? If you're trying to enter more time than was budgeted for certain tasks, you can get alerts around that. And of course, that would be reviewed in the review process. But that's all I really have to do in here other than enter a description of my work. So I'm just going to put something really quick here, and I'm going to hit save and close. So you do that, and we encourage that people do that as they work, right? I mean, super simple. And then when you have, let's say, your week's worth of time entries, you just highlight them and you click submit. And typically on average or default, the project manager on the project gets alerted, and they are the one then that has to review and approve or reject time entries. So if I go up to my approvals, let's see, is that the one? Yep, that's the one that I submitted. So I won't pull it up and review it and all that. I could just go here and either approve or reject that. There's still some things running in the background, so I kind of have to wait for that to complete. Sometimes that takes a minute, but you get the idea, right? So what happens then is that once, and you can do this when it's submitted or only when it's approved, that it impacts the project itself, right? So it would show that 8 hours was completed. That would then be able to be invoiced, right? Depending on how we've set up the invoicing and schedule. It would show, the remaining time on that task is either 0 or, whatever the case may be. But you can do that either upon submission or upon approval of the time entry. That's totally up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and approve that. Give that a second to run. And sometimes it takes a minute or two again for the that function to run. So I'm going to go ahead back to project. I have it pinned up here, back here. And let's see, it did not. Oh, yeah, it did. Right here's the effort completed. That's already been updated in the project. If I went to the task list, I could see that on that particular task, which was the kickoff. You can see that's marked as complete because all the hours have been exhausted. You know, again, I entered 8 hours and we only had 4 budgeted. So I would typically have an alert that's happening there. That's something we don't want to typically have done, especially on time and material project that, you have to go back to your customer and say, we've already done the work. And by the way, here's an invoice, right? That's not usually what you want to do, but you can see it's already impacted the project. All right. 5 minutes, and I've got a couple more things with pricing probably being the one of the most important that we'll get to here in a second. Next is that there is a great set of dashboards that we can provide you for the project area of the system. It's really, really in depth, all the way down through project timelines, your costs around projects, any milestones you've set up, to hit, any risks, which we didn't go over. But you can create risks or issues in a project, and they bubble up here to somebody to help mitigate or resolve, right? So you can see over here that we've got some risks that do have some cost exposure, et cetera. We've got issues. We've got resource availability, right? I would choose my resources up here and see the availability as a kind of an overview. You have your overview of your resources, so how many you have, and then down here by department, et cetera, all the way down through details of your resourcing, et cetera, right? So it's a very comprehensive set of dashboards that we can provide you at no cost as part of implementing project operations for you. Okay. One other area is the utilization analysis that the product does for you automatically underneath the covers. So let me just show you what that looks like here. Sorry, I just lost my mouse. There we go. I think. And my mouse is kind of flipping out here. All right, there it was. So back to that. This is what the resource utilization analysis looks like. You pick a period, and you can even pick resources or all resources. And it's going to show you based on that resource utilization setting in the resources record. Remember, we looked at that, their utilization goal. It shows you here if they're on track, not on track, right? And yellow means slightly underperforming. Red's underperforming, green is performing well. And it does it by day, actually. You can go all the way down to the day. Okay. Great tool for looking at resource utilization. All right, so let's, my goal is to end on time today. So let's look at pricing. So there are 2 licenses available for project operations. One is your team member license, really inexpensive, $10 per user per month. And that's for mainly your project resources, the people that actually do the task, perform the tasks, work, and deliver services. And they need to, manage their tasks, manage their time, and do time entry, do expense entry, et cetera. And it has down here what they have access to. They also have, of course, the access to the Outlook app and the mobile app for project operations as well. And then full users, which are your project managers, your resource managers, et cetera, they need a full license. To buy project operations, of course, you don't really buy software today, you rent it, right? It's cloud-based. You have to license a minimum of 20 users for the project operations full licenses, right? Now, keep in mind, if you want to do the bottom-up methodology that we started and went through, right, where you have a quote then has a project tied to it, and your service delivery team is using that to build the work breakdown structure that gets pulled back into the quote. If you want to do that, then you've got to have project operations licenses for your salespeople as well, or whomever is going to be responsible. Maybe it's like a sales desk, right, or a person that takes it from when the quote's initially established to getting the service delivery quote together. So that might be a single person. There's different levels, but just suffice to say, you've got to license 20 users of that product to license it. All right. What about implementation services? It varies wildly. We worked with a company, they're a national security company, 2,000 users of the product, a lot of them being the resource or the team member level. But, their implementation of project operations was 7 figures when it was all said and done, right? Huge organization, though. Really, it depends on the deployment type, right? Because as you go up in the deployment type, you have more things that it's able to do. Also, the specific areas of the product being deployed. So, for example, one of the first questions we'll ask, are you going to have time entry being performed? Are you going to manage expenses through the product, right? Because each of those require configuration, possibly customization, training, right? So you get the idea, right? So we have a conversation to kind of figure that out, what your customization requirements are, if there's any data migrating from another system, the number of users. And then we offer both a custom implementation service where we start with requirements analysis and really, build out your project, your requirements and design. So we know exactly what has to be done. We can, estimate the implementation. And again, that's for, those that need a custom implementation. But we also offer a rapid fixed cost service that we call Get On Board for project operations. That would be deploying the light version out of box, no customization. Includes training, setup, of the out-of-box features, et cetera. And you can contact us to discuss the cost based on what your needs are. So that's where we're at. We're at time. I'm sorry I didn't get to one question. We will get to questions. We'll send those out. So I apologize for that, but we had a lot to get through. I'm actually sweating a little bit. That was a lot to go through, but hopefully this was helpful. This is an amazing application. Absolutely incredible. I know it's transformed the way that we deliver project, way that we quote work and deliver work. So reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk further about this, as well as, demo anything in the context of your business. So thank you very much for attending. I appreciate it, and look for information on the next one next month. Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks again for watching. If you need additional help or resources for Dynamics 365 evaluations, implementation, training, or support, please be sure to visit our website at stravatechgroup.com.